Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here's another deck profile update for you guys today. This time it's on Salamangreats. So I actually got caught up experimenting with this deck because I wanted to try out some new combos and new strategies with it. So sorry this didn't come out as early as I had originally planned. I meant to actually get this out to you guys about a couple hours ago, but again, I was trying out some different cards, different techs, just to see like what I liked and see how I could, adjust my deck to deal with the current meta. Because right now the best decks are Bird Up, which basically is Tri-Brigade with Lyralisk. There's Sword Souls, there's Floowandereeze, and not to mention I also had to deal with certain disruptions like Effect Veiler and Nibiru, which are actually the two hand traps that really hurt me. Even impermanence can hurt me too. So I have to kind of like prepare myself to, to basically deal with those matchups. And with the cards I have right now, I should be able to do the trick. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this, and let's go ahead and get started. So last time I believe I played this at 41 cards. Well, guess what? I'm back to 40 cards exactly. So yeah. So starting off with one copy of Gazelle. Naturally, it's still limited. But it is what it is. But she's basically the heart and soul of the deck. Gets you access to all your cards by basically Foolish Burial them into the grave, and not to mention you can recycle your cards thanks to some of the cards we do play into the deck. So yeah, Gazelle is pretty nuts. And thankfully it is searchable, so no worries. Next, 3 copies of Foxy. This is basically Pot of Duality, or just a free extender piece if he's in your graveyard. And not to mention he's backward removal too, as long as it's face up though. So like if there's a face up card currently on the field, you can discard a Salamangreat card, special summon this card from your grave, and you get to pop 1 Spell Trap, optional by the way, that's currently on the field. Now, of course, again, it has to be face up, but it's a good way to deal with gates like there can be only one, Imperial Order, which honestly, I play Imperial Order myself, which honestly, I think that card needs to go get banned finally, because that card's really unhealthy for the game. But yeah, until then, I'm sticking with it myself too, because, I want to stop spell heavy decks, especially with DPE in the format. I definitely don't want that Fusion Destiny to go off. But anyway, Foxy, definitely a great card. And of course, you can only use one of his effects once per turn, and only once that turn. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I can. Next, 3 Spinny, another great extender. Helps you get access to your Mirage Dahlia. So, like, this and Foxy is basically full combo, so that's why I run 3 of each. 2 Jack Jaguar. This is one of your main recursions. So, also an extender piece, and he's level 4, so you can actually pull off some pretty cool rank 4 plays with him. But yeah, you get to shuffle back a Salamangreat monster, special summon this card to a Link monster's arrow. So, pretty good, in tangent with your Sunlight Wolf, that we can recycle more cards. So, because that's basically what this deck does. It recycles everything it needs, and yeah, it's just so it's just all about resource management basically. For the one-ofs, 1 Falco, recovers your back row if it's into the grave. You just basically reset them to the field, or you can bounce back a salad monster from your field back to your hand. Now, of course, it does actually have to make it back to your hand for it to be special summoned. But yeah, that's basically how Falco works. But again, like Foxy, can only use one of its effects per turn and only once that turn. And a card that's finally making its return, 1 copy of Salamangreat Fell. So believe it or not, I'm not running Parallel Exceed this time around. I know some Salad players have actually opted to cut that, and I can now see why. At first, I was thinking like, no, you don't want to cut Parallel Exceed. It's a free rank 4. Well, the thing is, like, you definitely want to extend your Salad package even more now, because especially with cards like Will of the Salamangreat, it basically helps you for backup plays. And not to mention with Parallel Exceed, testing the difference between the two. I actually bricked a lot more with Parallel Exceed than I do with any of these. So as long as you see Salad monsters, you pretty much got full combo as long as you have the right ones. And again, there's a lot of 3-ofs in this deck, and as long as you manage the ratios correctly, you should be good. But yeah, I felt like cutting Parallel Exceed was definitely necessary, and it's definitely working for me so far. The next card, which might as well have been a Salamangreat monster, 3 copies of Flame Buffalo. I'm sorry, 3, not 1. Basically the best normal summon in the entire deck. If it leaves the field, you can discard a Cyber's card or Cyber's monster and draw 2 cards. So you can basically use it. It can actually be chain blocked if you go into a Balinx. So yeah. And of course, 1 Sea Archiver as just another version of Spinny. So yeah, like you definitely want as many level 3s as you can, because you want to turbo into your Mirage Dahlia as quickly as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Cybers lineup. Now moving on to my hand traps. For hand traps, of course, got to play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Funny thing is, like, this deck is one of the only few that can actually recur it very consistently thanks to Sunlight Wolf's effect. 2 copies of Veiler, which yeah, I do run it myself. because, you know, it's Effect Veiler. I mean, it's really good, this format. Yeah, you have to watch out for Flundries because they do run Book of Moon, but honestly, that's if they open with it. So if they don't, you know, it's kind of on them. Just one Nibiru because, and you're going to see why in just a moment, but yeah, just one because it's more of a going second contingency plan. And plus, if I'm going first and I open up with too many of these, it's risky because I can be tempted to want to activate it. So yeah, again, it's mostly just something I want to use going second, but again, I don't typically run it for that specific reason. But again, you'll see momentarily why I run it. Next, moving on to spells already. 3 copies of Silent Mining, you know, definitely one of the best searchers. And of course, 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Was tempted to go back to 3, but I didn't like it, so I was like, you know what, I'll stick to 2. 2's still working just fine. Next, 2 Will the Salamangreat. 1 Circle, which some people are thinking could come back to 2, which honestly I agree. I think Circle is probably going to be a little bit more fair than Gazelle, honestly, so we'll just have to wait and see. And of course, 1 Sanctuary. Now, this is pretty much the reason why I'm running Nibiru. 3 copies of Crossout Designator, because it's just a version of Called by the Grave. And again, if I'm going, sometimes you never know when people are going to be main decking Nibiru. The only deck that I know that does that is probably Phantom Knights. But yeah, like I definitely want to protect myself, especially if I'm going first, and I want to make sure that my opponent doesn't try to hit me with a Nibiru. So I definitely want to see this in my opening hand. And of course, I do run the 1 Called by the Grave just to stop Ash Blossoms or anything else like DD Crows, because DD Crows also hurt too. So yeah, like the main hand traps I'm mostly going to hit is just going to be Nibiru, Ash, or Fake Veiler, even Impermanence too, which actually comes to our trap cards. 3 copies of Imperm. And I am running 1 of each of the main archetype trap cards, and of course 1 IO. So yeah, just kind of want to be prepared for that, you know. All right, so that's pretty much it for the extra deck. Not much different than my last one. There was only like just 1 minor difference, but for sure 3 Sunlight Wolf because it's the most important one. 3 Baylings to get you the field spell, and 2 Heat Leo, which I've actually considered cutting it to 1, but I haven't decided on that yet. But for sure, I do like it because, you know, it bounces back to back row. And if I need to get over something that's huge, I can just weaken it. So that's one of the things I like about Heat Leo. 1 Splash Mage, 1 Update Jammer, 1 Transcode Talker, 1 Access Code, which again, if you don't have it, you don't actually have to run it. Transcode basically helps you OTK anyway. So yeah, Transcode kind of does the exact same thing. The only difference is that Access Code pops cards non-targeting and your opponent can't respond to it. But anyway, for my ranks, 1 Mirage. Making a return, Baguska. Baguska is actually pretty strong right now, especially against the Flunderies in the Sword Soul matchups, because, you know, they all have to go into defense mode, and as long as they're in defense mode, they can't activate their effects, so no tokens for them. So if you can bring this out in your first turn, that's pretty good. I still feel like Abyss Dweller is really good too, because here's the thing. Against the Tenyi variant of Sword Soul, this basically stops the Tenyi package from the graveyard, because, you know, they're going to try to get some advantage off of that, and yeah, you definitely don't want that to kick off. So yeah, I feel like these 2 are still really good right now. I cut Dugaris just simply because I just didn't really feel like I needed to anymore. So yeah, I think Baguska is definitely going to be the better pick of the 2, in my opinion. I've actually seen some builds run Time Thief Reader, which is actually pretty good too if you want to try that out. I mean, I've tried it out and it works. So yeah. All right, that pretty much rounds out the extra deck. Now for the side deck, 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. This is still pretty good against the Tri-Brigade matchups. Eldritch is still a really powerful deck too, so like that's another deck you have to consider that still is out there. But yeah, this is mainly for Tri-Brigades because, you know, Bird Up does run the Tri-Brigade package. So if you stop their Lyrilisc engine, they can recover with their Tri-Brigade engine. So just bear that in mind. So I just want to be willfully prepared. Another card against the Sword Souls, you know, token collectors. If I'm going to end up going second on the next match, or rather the next game. I'd go Forbidden Droplets. 3 Cosmic Cyclones, because, you know, King of the Sky Prison is still a thing. So yeah, I feel like Twin Twisters is not as good as it was before, and it's better just to banish the back row. So I felt like that was a little bit more oppressive. 3 Rivalry of the Warlords. This is primarily just to stop kaijus. So like if I have a well-established board and my opponent happens to run kaijus, yeah, definitely want to get that going. And also strong against the Tri-Brigades because they're all different types. So yeah, it just stops them from, you know, controlling more than one type. Unfortunately, not so good against the Sword Souls because they're worms, unfortunately. So yeah, that's the thing. But it's also got some other good matchups too, like against the Invoked matchup. Like as soon as they summon out that Alistair, you spring this on them, they're locked into Spellcasters. so they can't even go to Mikaba because it's a machine monster. But yeah, it's a pretty tricky card. And of course, last but not least, one red reboot. And that pretty much rounds it up. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again next time.